Lakeshore Drive, 38 minutes. The ride from 95th to downtown, it's half an hour. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Variably cloudy, showers, and again that heavy, dense fog today, high 73. Currently 62. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Kristen Clark is the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, an important post within the AG's office. She was before Senate Judiciary Subcommittee to talk ostensibly about voting rights issues, but both Senators Ted Cruz from Texas and Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee took the occasion against the backdrop of this memo that Merrick Garland penned this week and disseminated, as we were discussing before Mike Scott's newscast, to ask Ms. Clark about her position with respect to federal legal intervention into school board meetings where there is disagreement over curriculum or COVID policy. Now, the backdrop of Kristen Clark, if you don't remember her confirmation hearing, she penned an op-ed as a lawyer activist in the private world. We must invest less in police and more in social workers. We must invest less in police and more in social supports in our schools. We must invest less in police and more in mental health aid. In other words, she supported defunding the police, although her spin at the time of her confirmation hearing was that, she didn't have the power of the purse strings at that time. So she's not a supporter of defund the police, even though she was advocating for transferring resources from police to those other areas that I just mentioned. So just so you understand that she is a BLM devotee and activist who happens to be a lawyer, who happens to be Biden's choice to run the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. This back and forth between Ted Cruz and Ms. Clark is illustrative.
Do you believe parents objecting to the teaching of critical race theory have civil rights in the democratic process?
I don't follow the question, Senator.
You don't understand the question whether parents objecting to critical race theory have civil rights?
The First Amendment is a core value in our democracy, and
I didn't say free speech. I said civil rights. School board meetings are democratic. They are petitioning your local government. Do they have civil rights that the voting rights gives a damn about?
Yet they have the right to express their view, to challenge the school boards, to ask.
And is it beneficial for the Attorney General to label them as domestic terrorists and direct the FBI to target them?
The Attorney General's memo deals with threats against public servants and says that threats against public servants are not only illegal, they run counter to our nation's core values.
Do you believe parents objecting at school boards are domestic terrorists?
I don't, Senator.
Do you believe Antifa are domestic terrorists?
I don't have a view about Antifa.
Do you believe the Black Lives Matter protesters who burned shops, who firebombed police cars, who murdered police officers, do you believe they're domestic terrorists?
Senator, I believe that we live in a society where people espouse different views, but what we don't want are threats.
Ms. Clark, it is amazing that you're not willing to condemn people who are murdering police officers and firebombing cities because your politics aligns with them. But at the same time, when it comes to parents at school boards, you're perfectly comfortable with calling a mom at a PTA meeting a domestic terrorist. Ms. Clark, with all due respect, this demonstrates why the Democrat proposal to take someone with as long a partisan record as you have and to put you in charge of striking down any voting rights law in the country that you disagree with is nothing but a partisan power grab. Let me give another example, because your division.
Now, I should say, she did say, I don't consider parents objecting at school board meetings to be domestic terrorists, but it's hard to take her seriously, to take that position seriously, given her previous positions, her ideological disposition, and the memo emanating from her superior, that would be Attorney General Garland, and how that has been advocated and could take the form of invoking the Patriot Act to surveil these subversives at the school board level.
So moms are being told they're criminals and potential domestic terrorists. Okay.
Yeah, and
that's not intimidating or anything when you're deciding whether or not to go.
Right, and in this climate where speech is violence, according to the left, when Kristen Clark says, "Well, people can petition their government, of course, or people have the right to express their views," but so long as it doesn't run afoul of whatever the leftist minders consider hate speech or speech that is equivalent of violence, and they are redrawing those lines such that they're completely unrecognizable from Supreme Court jurisprudence on the topics. For more on this topic, pleased to be joined by David Deavel. He's the editor of Logos, a journal of Catholic thought and culture, co-director of the Terrence J. Murphy Institute for Catholic Thought, Law, and Public Policy, and visiting professor at the University of St. Thomas. David, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan and Amy.
Well, the culture at the government schools just got that much more totalitarian this week, didn't it?
It certainly did. That's, as they say, that escalated quickly.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and so the parental response, I mean, this is pretty intimidating, as Amy was saying, when you're having the Attorney General of the United States talking about the FBI. You've got the National Association of School Board recommending usage of the Patriot Act. So in other words, you better maybe don't go to the microphone at the next school board meeting. Maybe keep your thoughts to yourself.
That's right. They, as the little clip you played a little bit earlier indicates, well, we believe that parents have the right to petition their government. But of course, if you're going to do that under the threat of being investigated by the FBI, that's not really a safe right, is it? Your threats are certainly something that should not be made, but it didn't used to be the case that the FBI intervened in local threats. That was a local police matter. But ideology determines that we have to have the federal government intervene in these cases, because I think parents are winning in many cases at the local level.
Yeah, but are there any recorded acts of violence?
Well, I mean, in the letter that the National School Board Association had, there were a couple of actual threats, but they included among these threats, parents calling school board members names or saying that they were wrong or that they were lying. So this is clearly not directed simply to threats. It's directed against any dissent from what school board members are saying.
Mm-hmm. And the response on the some of the issues that are being so hotly debated is that there's no point of any discussion here because we're not doing what you're saying we're doing. This is Terry McAuliffe's posture, the Virginia Dem governor candidate. Critical race theory isn't being taught. Well, can you define it? I don't need to define it because it's not being taught. Well, how do you know it's not being taught if you don't know what it is? Well, I just know. I mean, that to me sounds like a very desperate man because he's up for election next month. And I don't think in Virginia, of all places, that Terry McAuliffe and the purveyors of critical race theory and this curriculum, I don't think they're winning.
No, I don't think they are. Chris Rufo at the Manhattan Institute, who's really done a lot to bring this out into the open, has pointed out in a recent City Journal article that the attempt to sort of peg any resistance to critical race theory, although we're not teaching it, but we really are, to peg this as simply a kind of anti-black or a backlash against civil rights is preposterous, because all the polling shows that it's not just white parents who don't like this, but it's black parents who don't like this. In Virginia, where you're talking about Terry McAuliffe, It's Hispanic and Asian parents who are very upset about this kind of teaching and this kind of approach, which racializes everything and punishes people who get on the wrong side of the progressive bureaucrats.
Well, and the idea that this doesn't exist, so I love this. It's the Loudoun County superintendents did the same thing. It's an arcane theory taught in some law schools. It doesn't exist, but let me go on and tell you why it's being characterized unfairly. Okay.
Yeah.
So we see this. I mean, we had Paul Rossi on the show yesterday from Grace Church School in Manhattan. What he experienced is just one manifestation of it. I'm being asked to treat my students differently based on their race. I'm not going to do that. We saw a black female parent in an Atlanta area school sue her school because they were literally segregating kids by race. White kids with a white teacher and black kids with a black teacher at her kids' primary, her grade school, basically. And she had to sue this. I mean, this is what we're talking about, and what you're describing is the racialization of everything. You want to get specific about specific theorists and argue the semantics of a proper definition of critical race theory. That's so beside the point. What you know what you're doing. We see it in the PowerPoints. We see it in the indoctrination. We see it in incidents like Paul Rossi at Grace Church or this school in Atlanta. That's what we're talking about.
That's right. Anytime you start to see any of this language about, white accountability or anything like that, you know what you're talking about when you see these practices of segregating students. I believe the Atlanta woman you're referring to, a black woman with kids in the school, and her husband even taught at the school, and she was shocked to find out that they didn't want her child in the class that was not the black class. It's really sick what we're doing here. We're moving far backwards on racial issues in the name of anti-racism, promoting segregation and the destruction of standards. And what really is at stake here is any kind of treatment of students and people as equals. And when they can't get equal outcomes, they start segregating, or in many cases, they get rid of standards altogether. I just saw a story yesterday about a school in Minnesota where I am that has now decided that no one can flunk any class.
Right. Yeah, that's going on here.
That's great, but we've all heard of social promotion for years, and it doesn't help anybody if you get through classes and you can't read or you can't do math. But in the name of equity, in the name of equal outcomes by race, we want to make sure that nobody fails because it might look bad. Instead of teaching black, white, Asian, Hispanic, and every other child in the world, we just say, well, we can't do it, so we'll just say that everybody's fine.
Having consequences for your actions is sometimes a really good thing.
That's right. Tom Sowell, the great economist who's been at the Hoover Institution for many years, talks about the fact that although it was not a good thing in the 1950s to grow up black, he was always glad that he did because there was none of this nonsense about, that's good enough for you, young black man. Instead, he was challenged by people, and he became one of the greatest intellects of the last 50 years. But that doesn't happen now, all in the name, strangely, of anti-racism.
And unfortunately, this is not limited to the government school systems. We see this in Catholic schools and private schools generally as well. So you can't just say, I'm going to take my kid out of the government school and send him to the local Catholic school. You got to do a deep dive on the local Catholic school these days, too.
That's correct. I mean, we had our kids in a charter school, and in Minnesota, charter schools are run as under the public school district, but they have separate boards. And it was very good for a long time, but then it fell. But then when our school went in this direction of critical race theory and critical gender theory, we had to look around at which schools we wanted to send our kids to, because there are many that are leaning in that direction, and it goes under different terminology, as we pointed out. Critical race theory, of course, they're not teaching it as a law school program, but social and emotional learning and all of these various things that get away from the idea that we're actually learning the material and you're going to be held accountable. So that's why I think so many people have been looking towards homeschooling and towards independent private and Catholic schools. because you have to be very, very careful about where you send your kids, because teachers are coming out of the same programs everywhere, and they're all learning the same stuff.
He is David Deavel, editor of Logos, a journal of Catholic thought and culture. He's the co-director of the Terence J. Murphy Institute for Catholic Thought, Law, and Public Policy, and a visiting professor at the University of St. Thomas up Great White North, as he was describing, in Minnesota. David Deavel, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Salem Surround Chicago is currently offering an exceptional opportunity for a digital-savvy, highly motivated sales professional to join our advertising team, selling our digital marketing solutions to local, small to medium-sized businesses. The ideal candidate will be a goal-oriented, relentless hunter, driven to win new business and have a track record exceeding monthly goals. As a media strategist, you'll be in the field every day, meeting with businesses, creating strategies to grow their business using our full portfolio of broadcast and digital marketing solutions. You should have at least 3 years of digital experience, proven success in sales, and a knowledge of how to buy digital ads for local businesses. We offer a competitive salary plus commission based on experience and full benefits package including paid holidays and vacation. Let's talk. Visit salemmedia.com and click on careers. salemmedia.com and click on careers to apply online. See how Salem is different. Salem Media Group is an equal opportunity employer.
Hey, Dan Proft, you've heard me talk about Northridge Prep on the